Have you ever approached your job and felt like you were struggling with other departments? Well, some practical advice could be assume good intent, or go introduce yourself to people in the organization to begin breaking down those barriers that may be up unintentionally, and it will improve your work life. All that coming up next on the Unity Talks podcast.
Welcome to Unity Talks, where the hiring experts of Dallas-based recruiting firm Unity Search engage in lively discussion with successful business leaders to dissect their careers and how they got to where they are today, the obstacles overcome to reach their success, and steps they've taken to stay at the top of their respective fields. So listen in as we provide you with the thought-provoking conversation and ideas that keep industries moving forward.
And welcome back to another edition of the Unity Talks podcast. And it's a little bit different today. We've got special guests, and if you are watching us online, we're actually in a different room. That's not the big surprise. The big surprise is we have two guests here today. So our guests are Craig Storey. He is the CFO of Vari. And our other guest is Emily Gros, who is one of the sales executives at Vari. So we're so thankful that y'all could join us today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah,
exciting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, excited to be here.
This should be good. I almost messed up on Emily's name right before we started. I'm like, how do you pronounce your last name? And she told me.
Being from Louisiana, it happens all the time. So.
I appreciate that, yes. So before we get too far in, I'm going to go through both of our guests' background and just give you some high-level view of their career. I've actually shortened Craig's a lot because we only have 30 minutes.
Because he's old.
And it would have taken the entire 30 minutes. I'm reading this page and I'm like, yeah, we're cutting a lot. We're giving the highlights I chose, and then we're also giving Emily's highlights. We're going to run into a little bit of a infomercial about Vari after that, and then we're jumping into our content. All right, so Craig, 2014, you've been with Vari for 8 years.
I was employee 19.
Employee 19, and now there are over 350 employees at Vari.
Correct.
That's awesome. So you've been there for a long ride.
Yes, I knew Jason and Dan, the co-founders. I'd known them for about a decade and always wanted an opportunity to work with them, and so I jumped at the chance, and it's been a very fun ride.
Here's what's crazy. I was at Vari in 2014, 2015.
Right.
Very different location than
Yes.
what we are in
I think
today.
we were still in the Jimmy building, weren't we?
We were still in the Jimmy
Okay.
building, yes. And you guys were like tucked away back in the corner.
Did we give you the tour of the showroom?
Yes, I got
Okay.
the tour. Very small, about the size of this room we're in right now.
Oh, but we didn't give you the Jimmy showroom tour.
I saw is it the warehouse?
Yes.
I saw the warehouse.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Jemmy is one of the largest sellers of seasonal outdoor products in the world. They created the lawn inflatable. They started by creating big mouth Billy Bass. That's what made them blow up. You remember the wall-mounted stinging fish?
Oh, yeah.
Take me to the river. And then they ended up evolving into this amazing lighting and lawn inflatable. So they own about 90% of the seasonal lawn inflatable market. So all those blow-up Santas and we incubated in their office, but their office is also a showroom. So you'd walk through and there'd be all these, giant panda bears and Santa Clauses
I
and
remember this.
ghosts and it was my two daughters who were around 4 and 6 at the time I jumped in were. I think their biggest disappointment was when they found out I actually sold furniture instead of Halloween stuff.
Yeah, that office but the office now is phenomenal, and we're actually going to get into that real quick here in a second. So in 2019, outstanding CFO for large private company as nominated by the DCEO Magazine Awards. And then that's where I kind of cut it off because it just got longer and longer and longer. But we can't skip out. You just said it. You've got two daughters, 11 and 13,
Yes.
both in middle school.
Correct.
And that's awesome. And then you had me on this. You're like a kind of a distance type athlete for the most part because it's skiing, running, cycling, and then you kind of sneak the CrossFit in at the very end, right?
Yeah, I love sweating.
I love that.
Don't forget the Peloton.
And the cycling. I thought we were covering it with the cycling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like on the tour path. You'll see him, casually.
So if I got a
in
Peloton,
the
he's
gym
going to be an
working out.
instructor
That's
of
great.
mine soon.
Probably. I wouldn't put it past him.
Awesome. And so now we're moving on to you. Okay. So been there since 2017.
Yes.
Right? And worked your way up, one of the top performing sales executives at Vari. Before that, hospitality industry, 7 years, sales and marketing, consistently moving into additional positions. And you are also really into a healthy lifestyle, which I love that.
Yeah, I mean, that was great. You just rattled that off like, it's your life almost. Definitely part of one of the things that attracted me, the mental health, just work-life balance at Vari and the culture. And coming from a different industry that maybe environment didn't have that. So very attracted to that. And then having an on-site gym and being able to take a break when you need. And everybody kind of needs that in order to recharge and be their best self at work. So it's great.
Love that. Well, we're very thankful that you're here. So we're going to start off like this. So Craig, 2-minute, 3-minute infomercial. Tell us about who Vari is, what Vari does for those people who may be hiding under a rock.
It's Vari is about a 10-year-old company. We have a mission of creating workspaces that elevate people and cultures. And we started off with the now ubiquitous Varidesk, which is a sit-stand desk converter. We've sold over 3 million units to over 60 countries worldwide, and it really launched the brand. And we, in the evolution, as we started migrating from selling product online to starting to talk to corporate customers, everything from mom and pops to federal government to Fortune 10 companies, what we realized was that there was a lot of pain in the contract furniture industry. It's a very complicated ecosystem. There's not a lot of flexibility in the product. It's highly customized. And we saw an opportunity to jump in there. And so we started cultivating a line that is always in stock of product, that everything you'd need to outfit your office: conference tables, movable walls, lighting, soft seating, standing desks, of course, everything you would need. And along the way, we started realizing that the workplace was changing, and that and co-working had changed. It had changed how people looked at work. And so as we saw flexible workspaces growing, we started talking to commercial asset owners and said, hey, our solution would work great if you wanted to create flexible spaces, you wanted to minimize your TI, you could do shorter term leases, because that's really what causes those long-term leases, is trying to recoup those tenant improvement costs when new tenants move in. And Dan and Jason, being the entrepreneurs that they were, said, we need to move this faster. We want to prove to asset owners. So we bought the old sales headquarters building and turned it into a concept called VeriSpace. It's a 400,000 square foot flexible space, enterprise level space as a service, flexible space solution. And we had leased 80% of it before we were done with demo, and bought another building out in Southlake. And then we just built our third VeriSpace in Capel, which is now our headquarters, VeriSpace Capel at 121 in Freeport. So it's been amazing. When I came in selling a desk on top of a desk, if you would have told me that I was going to be in the real estate business, 8 years later, I would have laughed. But I should have realized, knowing Dan and Jason, that was we were going to be doing something different.
Yeah, if you should really look them up to our audience. It's they've got great products, and it's expanded rapidly. And you hit my cue, great segue. So a Monday in August, I'm out at Vari, and y'all's a new place in the Capel area. You're taking me on a tour. You came in halfway. You joined us on the tour. And here's what I noticed. Outside of the environment was so cool, and everybody was super welcoming, and your products were great, it was you, Craig, were Emily's champion. Emily, you're Craig's champion. Everybody knew who Emily was when we went into any of the areas, and everybody was everybody else's champion. And a lot of times in accounting and finance, like if I go back into early my career, I was a financial analyst before doing this 18 years ago, and then doing this for 18 years, working with finance, accounting, executives, business owners. There's this constant underlying theme that is a little bit of tension between your accounting and finance organization and sales and operations. I know there was with me when I was a financial analyst. It's like the salespeople are, if I quote Jerry Maguire, show me the money. It's like you got to hey, look, I need to spend money to make money. We've all heard that. And then you've got the accounting and finance, right? Which is what I was at the time. I've played both roles in my career. The accounting, it's like, no, this is your budget. You need to stay within this. Gosh, the sales team's super frustrating because they're always want, and there's this friction and a power struggle between the two. And I don't know if that day I was walking through Narnia when I was at y'all's office, but there was none of that. And so I thought, man, this is just a perfect opportunity to talk about and share with our audience how did Vari get there, and how is the environment and how is the culture, because our audience is finance and accounting executives and people who are climbing in their career. And I felt like y'all could share a lot of really good knowledge. So Craig, I'm going to ask you first, when you look at Vari, you've been there for 8 years. Certainly it's not Narnia, right? I'm wrong, right? Y'all have had struggles and y'all have worked through them. Can you share a little bit about that evolution?
Sure. I mean, we're probably Narnia light. So we're aspiring to Narnia. I think the first big jump was moving from a B2C organization. So when we had the Varidesk, most of our revenue for the first 2 to 3 years, a disproportionately large portion of our revenue was through our website or through Amazon, right? So we didn't really we had a couple of corporate salespeople. But what started happening was that we started getting more and more calls from corporations saying, hey, it was death by 1,000 cuts. We had what we called the Trojan, who was the first person who went out generally on their own and bought a Varidesk. And they started saying, I love my Varidesk, right? And everybody, and actually if you do a heat map of our reviews, love is the number one word that's used, which is awesome.
I like that.
And I think it was about not just about the product, but about the experience. And we really invested heavily in the customer experience. And so now all of a sudden we see our corporate team growing because customers are saying, what if I buy 10? What if I buy 50? What if I buy 100? I don't want to buy through the website. How do I? So we started building this team. And so that first transition was, how do we build a sales organization? How do we give them enough latitude that they can go out and they can run and they can grow, but try to keep the tracks on the rails. Right?
Yeah. It's like we're in a bowling alley with the bumpers up.
Yes, right. And so it was we made a lot of mistakes, and I think that's one of the things that I love about the organization, and I think that starts with the founders, is this idea that, hey, look, we recognize we're going to make a lot of mistakes, but that's how we learn. So, assuming good intentions and saying we're all going to be in this together. And I think, so we started kind of building this really good foundation. And then we said, hey, we're going to pivot to enterprise furniture, and we're going to start selling all this stuff to outfit your office. That was another monumental leap. And that's where it got even more tricky, because now we're talking about projects, and this is when the accounting and finance piece of it starts coming in, because we're saying, okay, we've got terms, and how much what are the terms, and how do we do this? And I've always said to my team, we can't be the department of no. We have to enable the sales team to be able to do their job. Now, that doesn't mean give them whatever they want and free for all, but it does require us to be solution focused. And again, assuming good intent and saying, okay, the answer could be yes if, or yes but it can't be no. So we've really kind of hammered that into our team, and yes, we've made a load of mistakes on the way. But I think all in all, what that's done is created a culture where I think largely the sales team and the accounting and finance team are invested in each other's success and recognize that the two working together lifts the boat.
Love that. You're shaking your head. I'm watching you, and you're going, yes, exactly what he's saying. So how does what he say, how does that land on your ears?
Well, starting as an executive assistant and kind of growing with the company, early on, you could see maybe some gaps or some room for improvement. And one of the very first things on an interview, when I interviewed at Vari, they said, we have a lot of think tank meetings and we want people to bring ideas to the table and kind of understand what pain points you see and what solutions do you have. And then we'll make a decision as a company and move forward with that. And then I think it's always that embrace change. Like, hey, that we're gonna try it out, just like Craig said. And I've been a part of that, where we're like, hey, we're gonna put our eggs in this basket. If it doesn't work, we'll pivot and try something else. Being very flexible with solutions and different things help. And then that helps Craig learn what we're facing day to day. And then same thing with internal. Okay, if I'm talking to a customer and they ask me, what are the payment options? And then they start bringing stuff up that we might not know. Our solution or my game plan is, hey, let me get a meeting with accounting so then we can talk through what might work best for you. And I think that has been kind of the thread throughout is let's find a way. Let's not lead with no. And most of the people on Craig's team that I've talked to often, they know that I'm going to talk to them early and often so that we can find the best solution for that project, that customer, that account. And then if it works, great. And if it doesn't, we'll think of something else. So I think that's the root behind everything. You have to focus on what's best for the customer, and it could be customized. It doesn't have to be as black and white as what we've known in the past, but let's think outside the box and get creative and see where it goes.
You're both each other's customer, and then you have the end customer. And I like you said, you've already said it twice, which I really like, it's assume good intent. And, you know, I've talked to my team before, it's like, you know, we have a recruiting division and we have sales. And so there can be tension in that. And some tension's good, right? Because you're working towards the best solution for your end customer. And it also shows that you're passionate about coming to the right solution, which that's great. Too much tension is what you're trying to avoid. But if you know you're on the same team and you're working for the good of the customer, it's just a difference of opinion, then you should be assuming good intent.
Right.
Yours is just a better way of, mine is like, it takes me, you know, 50 words to get that out. And yours is like, assume good intent. It's like, then I'm like, okay, well, I'm stealing it.
Craig's a man of few words, but they're always impactful.
Well, Jason and I say that to each other, our CEO and I say that to each other all the time, right? Because you can lock yourself into a mindset that, oh, somebody's trying to get away with something, right? But at the end of the day, if you start with, I'm going to assume good intent, that doesn't mean that you don't scrutinize. It just means that you start from a place of, okay, they're doing what's in the best interest of the business, or what they're doing is not trying to pull one over on us. It's they're negotiating from their end from what's best for in their best interest.
Yeah. You're still working towards that customer, which is great. So I'm stealing that. Assume good intent. It's nice. It's better than my long drawn out. Okay, so Emily, the Vari Way program. So this is something that you've talked with me about in the past. So tell us a little bit about what the Vari Way program, because it goes into what we're talking about right now.
Yeah, 100%. So a lot of leading, or kind of going back a little bit to what Craig mentioned with understanding we're going to grow. And so there's things that we might have started in the beginning and we need to pivot to change. We kind of looked at our organization as we're moving towards the project focus. We said, how can we better align departments? So do we need a team that may kind of connect the dots? So we have sales, which is the team that I'm on, and then we have a customer success manager team that we kind of internally call them the quarterback between projects, accounting, finance, operations, everything internally. And then we have project management. So everybody has a step in the process, and then that also goes into design as well. So when you jump on a customer call, everybody kind of can share, hey, here's my role, here's what the customer can expect from me, and everybody shares a little bit about their part of the pie, I like to say. So when the customer understands who does what in that process, they know everybody's together. So it's not an Emily win by any means, it's a company win. And knowing that everybody understands who's doing what when, it streamlines the process for the customer. And there's still things that we're ironing out as we go, but for the most part, it's very successful. I really appreciate having the understanding now. Accounting will ask me what they need from me, and then I do the same. So you build that relationship, and communication is always key. And so I think that has really helped with the Vari Way program. We know more. It's
intentionally inviting everybody in to win the deal with the customer.
Right.
Is there a tagline for the Vari Way program?
I don't think we have it. Do we have? Oh, well, we don't have a tagline, but I will say that Emily was one of the first ones to really dig in and embrace it, and it doesn't surprise me because I think there's nobody who emulates our values more than Emily does. But she had her TSM and her space planner, and they developed, there was a name developed for them, Snap, Crackle, and Pop. And so they've kind of become the prototype for what this needs to look like from a collaboration and partnership standpoint. When you think about our business, we're trying to do things differently. If you look at the traditional contract furniture industry, it's a lot like the auto industry. So, you know, if I go on the Ford website, I can design my Ford down to every feature I want, but ultimately what it does is it kicks me out to a dealer, and then the dealer has stuff in stock that they want to get rid of, and it's the list and discount game, and they make most of their revenue not off the sale of the car, but on the after sale parts and service. The furniture industry works very similarly. So what we said was we built our business on a direct relationship with our fans, as Jason likes to call them, and we respect that relationship, we value that relationship, and we want to expand that relationship. So we control from the point it, you know, comes into the warehouse all the way to you know, when it's the customer says, yep, this is great, or no, it's not great. So when we first started doing it, we just, especially not being furniture industry people, we made a lot of mistakes. And I think ultimately what happened was, and I'll give credit to Jeff Lamb, our president and COO, he said, we need a guiding light. We need a North Star, and it became the Vari Way. And now the Vari Way has expanded beyond the operational piece of it, and making sure that we're organizationally structured to get it from sale to install to marketing and sales now, having the Vari Way to make sure that, hey, are we aligned on the messaging? Are we aligned on, so, because what happened is you have this proliferation of marketing materials, and everybody's like, well, okay, now I'm overwhelmed. I don't know what to bring to the table. And I think that's really starting to pay some dividends, you know, just trying as you grow to break down those silos as they occur and make sure that we're all operating under the same system.
So if I get really tactical about that, because you just said there was a critical mass that was achieved, and Jeff Lamb says, I mean, we need a guiding light, we need a program, we need a tagline that we push out. So as a leadership team, are you pushing it down to your people? Like, how does that catch fire?
I think that the overall concept was maybe pushed down, saying, hey, look, we've got to get there. But this was a purely collaborative. We had a large task team, people representing pretty much every group in the building, to sit and design this and say, this is what we think it needs to look like. And then you start sort of beta testing it and saying, okay, does this work? And then once you start seeing it working, you expand it. And we're not a patient organization. And I think that the challenge is you want to immediately go in and change stuff, right? Oh, this doesn't work. And embrace change being one of our core values, as Emily said. I think, you know, it even further, you have to say, well, okay, wait a second, let's give it a little room to breathe and let's see. And I think as a result, we have made tweaks, but the initial construct has really has maintained, you know, the way we've done it, and I think that and it is getting better and better. It's just it was a lot of sausage making, and a lot of the team really, again, partnering together and saying, together we're going to succeed. We can't do this if it can't be a finger pointing exercise. It can't be a, hey, that's your job, that's my job. And a lot of it is around creating role clarity. But at the end of the day, we all got to pick up. If something falls, if something happens, we all got to be prepared to roll up our sleeves. I mean, I've been involved in all kinds of things, you know, and, you know, everything from installs to calling up a customer when we've had a bad experience and saying, hey, look, I'm sorry, what can we do?
Well, one of the things that you mentioned a few minutes ago as you were talking is I'm sitting there thinking, like, especially with salespeople in general, I'm going to pick on salespeople because, you know, I think most people sitting in this room would say, hey, we're salespeople. You can be very territorial. Well, that's my customer. No one talks to my customer but me. And I often relate it back to my wife. She'd kill me if I was saying this out loud.
This is being recorded.
I know, but she'll never see this. Trust me. So she, she was a bedside nurse for 20 years, and she does something different within the healthcare industry now. And when people get so territorial and they become protective and possessive of their stuff, I call it the nurse's station. because in general, that's the way nurses are. Like, she would tell me just these war stories of like, don't you go near my patient. And this is how I'm handling that patient. And I've just said that in corporate America, like, we don't want to be a nurse's station where we're so territorial that someone else can't come in to help us with our customer, that we need to invite them in because maybe they have a better solution. And that's exactly what you were just outlining, where everybody's defining their role to their customer so that we're swarming the customer together. Every role clarity is super important if you're going to do that, because then you got too many people stepping on each other's toes, right? But I think that's what I see is, instead of being territorial, you're being inviting towards all of the groups within the organization. And I think that's so, like, I'm learning that from listening to you guys. That's so valuable. I know I can get better at being more inviting to help problem solve, instead of thinking, well, I've got all the answers and I just need to move quick because I'm a little impatient with it, so I want to step on the gas.
Right.
So I really appreciate that. So what is the benefit to an organization buying in to working more collaboratively, such as the Vari way? And I would say it two ways. Number one, I think it's important for people to know what is it personally, because sometimes you have to make it personal for people to buy in. But then I think the second question outside of that is, I'd ask you, I'm going to start off, let's redo this question here, okay? So I'm going to be very specific. Speaking as a salesperson, how has it benefited salespeople to invite accounting, finance people into your decision-making process and swarming your customer?
Great question. I initially will say the more you communicate, the better experience for the customer. Because to Craig's point, we're trying to streamline the industry or the buying process for furniture. So the earlier I can loop in accounting and say, hey, this is a project that's coming down the pipeline. Who do you need to connect with? What do I need to line up? What do I need to send them ahead of time? So we are simultaneously working all facets of the project. So when the customer says, hey, I need to be in by the end of the month, no problem. Everybody knows what they're doing and we just execute. And I think that's where you have the buy-in from everyone. And so when they have the name like, oh, this project was closed, I'm always like, here are the people that helped. And so just the appreciation around it, it gives people ownership. And then I think that comes into your work ethic. Like, you're excited to have that and to know, oh, I matter. Like, my job matters. And I'll give a shout out to Craig, like you said, cheerleaders here. But my very first experience at Vari, I was picking up furniture, boxes on the ground. And all of a sudden, Craig stops me. The CFO says, hey, you're doing a great job. I look up, I'm like, oh, you know who I am? Like, I'm thinking, like, I'm just another person at the office. Because corporate America, you can't lose sight that companies are growing, they're so big, not everyone knows everyone. And one of the things that I always love is that the CEO, the CFO, the president, they all know who I am. And those are things that you have to invest in. So like, I have to get to know them. I have to show I'm a team player. I'm here. I'm ready to learn and be authentic. And if I mess up, own it. Say, hey, I've dropped the ball here. I didn't realize I needed to loop you in sooner. So now I know you're trying to, do things really quickly out of your timeline. But recognizing that and saying it's not going to be the norm, it's a miss, and I'm going to work to actually change that and actually make effort to do that, I think goes a long way.
So from a broader sales organization, you're satisfying your customers' needs better and you're extending gratitude back to those people. As a salesperson, my thought would be you should be able to close a lot more business, right? If you're going to make it personal to you, then at the end of the day, you're going to close more business, and then you make more money by having accounting and finance help you through that process instead of hoarding it, right? And not inviting people into the decision-making process. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, once we have a lot of the Vari way is very handoff-ish. So it's, hey, here's this step, and so everyone knows what's happening. So once I get it to, they sign the quote, they sign something, I can go on to the next thing, and I trust my team because I've built that relationship with them. And we're very open on Teams to say, hey, chatter me if you have any questions, and they do that. I had one from Chris earlier today, and I was like, hey, I'm not really sure. Maybe, let me get back to you tomorrow. So having that conversation in that window of being approachable, I think goes a long way. So then I can simultaneously work on finding new business, bringing in new accounts, but I'm trusting my team. Like on tours, I'll say, hey, Vincent, I got that payment coming in for you, as I'm walking someone else through the tour. So it's maybe not as candid as that, but in general, I'm able to say like, hey, I'll reach out to you later. I have something coming your way. So then it's, oh, okay, like it's exciting in a sense, I think at least.
Yeah, it allows you to accomplish more because it frees up your time from having to worry about all the steps being executed. You trust them.
Yep.
And so you can go out and get more business for the organization, right? That's your role.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So from an accounting and finance standpoint, what is the best approach for someone in accounting and finance? Because that's the large majority of our listening audience.
Right.
To approach sales and operations, to help them close that business, to show them we're on the same team, to show them I'm not your adversary, I want to be your business partner.
Yeah. So I think it starts actually, I feel, organizationally. I will say that what's separated Vari from a lot of companies I've worked for is that, and it starts with our co-founders, who are two of the most low ego people you'll ever meet in your entire life. They don't carry large egos, and I think that's bled through the organization. So we've had high ego people come in and they struggle because if you're not open to accepting new ideas, to questioning, having your view challenged, then you can't get to this place. And I think that as you drill down to the team, you're right, we're hardwired because we're told from day one, you're here to protect the assets of the company. You have to be here. If the salespeople are going to go off, they're going to do whatever they're going to do, but you have to put guardrails around them, right? And I think that's what creates the friction when at the end of the day, we're all in this to succeed together, right? And I think that as long as your team comes into the sales team and says, look, we want to help. We're here to help you get to your sale. But remember, we're here to collect the cash. Like selling is great, but we got to collect the cash and we got to do it profit, and we got to do this profitably. And I think if you can go into it just saying, hey, here's the why we're challenging this, or here's the why with regard to this customer and why we're requesting this. I think that if you can start from that place, and if you can really listen to the struggles that the salesperson is having, or the sales leader, and as you're talking about process, I think it ends up resulting in better outcomes. I think it feels good in the short run to Barney Fife somebody. That's an old reference. I'm sorry. And say, no, this is I'm the sheriff. Or I'm the deputy. This is the way it's going to happen, right? But at the end of the day, that doesn't contribute to the success of the business long term.
Yeah. Well, it's listening to what your salespeople are faced on the front lines. Instead of going into the conversation going, well, I already know what I'm going to tell them, and this is what I'm going to tell them,
right,
and they're just going to have to shape up. It's, you know what, maybe I need to open my ears and listen to them and consider, right, and assume good intent. I think that's exactly, like those things are keys in order for the success of an organization. But I'm going to go one step further for you. How do you do that in today's environment if we have listeners who are, well, we're hybrid or we're still remote? Because that poses an additional challenge, because when I'm listening to both of y'all talk, and I've seen you in action, and it's like I'm up bebopping around the office and talking to people, and it's like, hey, Emily, we're on a tour, like, So you can tell that's your vibe, right? So how do you get that to happen when you're not in front of people?
You want me to take it?
Yeah, you take it.
One of the things I'll give my current boss, credit for is he'll say, let's set up a meeting. Let's have a meeting. Let's do that. And so the action and being available and approachable. So, hey, there's a situation that happened. We could have done this a little bit better, or I might have some suggestions. If I'm not able to get up and walk over and talk to that person, I want to build a relationship with them. So I'll get on a Teams call, say, hey, I have some time in my calendar this date. When are you available? Let's try to build that, like, kind of bridge the gap. Like, talk to people, get to know people in other departments. And my biggest thing, anybody will hear me say this, please put your picture on Teams. people want to talk to people they know, they see. They want to be able to say, oh, I know Craig. So he's more approachable when I do see him in person. But for the hybrid environment, I would really say technology's come a long way. So we can, and we do need to sometimes slow down, set the meeting, reset expectations, realign roles and responsibilities, and then everyone's on the same page. And it's not a bad thing to say, oh, I have to set a meeting. It's, hey, I want to really learn and understand and listen to why maybe I'm not doing it the way that would be, I'm kind of silos in the way that I've only done it. So let's have a meeting and talk through what suggestions do you have? What are some solutions? And I would just say just being open to sharing the good, the bad, and the ugly. I always say that because we don't grow if we just give all the highlights, right? Like I want to know, okay, where did someone on my team struggle? So then when that's kind of coming along, I can ask them, what was your solution? Or I'll reach out to Craig and say, hey, I have a CFO coming in. Like, do you want to join that tour in case he asks me something I'm not sure? And so I just think being open and available, I would kind of give that as like a takeaway for remote or hybrid, because everybody can add value that way.
Yeah, we're in an interesting period of time, right? Everybody's trying to figure it out, and I don't know that we have it completely figured out. I think there are a couple things that we've done. We feel like we're better together, and I think that we happen to be in this flexible workspace solutions business. So we've created, we think, a workspace that encourages people to come in. We've really shifted and refocused our workspace to create a lot more collaborative spaces. So when people are in, they can collaborate. To Emily's point, I insist that people not only have a picture up, but that they're actually on screen. Because I just think if I'm staring at a picture or if I'm staring at an icon, I'm not getting, it's hard enough to read a room. When you're in a room together, you add the layer of the video, and then you add, I don't have any idea how Emily's reacting to something I'm saying if I'm looking at a static picture of her, right? Mm-hmm. So I think we've set some ground rules, and we also have rules around. I tell my team, if you've exchanged 3 emails back and forth and you are still don't have resolution, then somebody jump on a phone call or somebody walk over and say, let's talk this out, right? Because you can always be the 300-pound gorilla if you're behind a computer keyboard. But if you're face to face with somebody, then you actually have to, sit and hash it out. And people are a lot more collaborative and friendly when they're actually face to face with one another.
Yeah, I feel like that's so natural for salespeople to, well, let's just go talk with someone, get out from behind my desk and go talk to them, or always have their screen on whenever they're on a Teams call or something like that. And accounting and finance people, by nature, most are a little bit more reserved, and so they'll just have the blank screen and maybe a name, or
right.
So you're talking to just like this black square, right? Which can be really frustrating. But I think it's good for leaders to encourage when they are in the office, go get out from behind your desk, from your standing desk, right?
Yep.
You're already standing up, so just go walk over to them and talk to them. And then if you are at home, pick up the phone or turn your screen on. And that's such practical advice to break down those barriers that seemingly always naturally just pop up, even though you don't want them to.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's great. Okay, so a couple of really quick practical steps so that people can actually tomorrow begin implementing some things that y'all might share with them for advice. So from a sales standpoint, if you're a salesperson, what is advice that a salesperson could walk away from today, implement tomorrow on taking some action steps towards breaking down that wall and working together and not being so overly protective?
Great. I thought about this. So great takeaway would be communicate, but get to know at least one person in every department outside of your direct team. That way you have a go-to, and that's something, they build a relationship with you, you build one with them, and then everybody understands why you do what you do. So get to know one person in a department that's not yours.
Yeah, I like that. What about an accounting leader telling their team, advising their team? How would they tell them to not have that wall get put up, or if it is already there, chipping away at that?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what we opened with, which is one, assume good intent and start from that place, and then understand that our role is is to protect the assets of the company, but it's also within the mindset of enabling the sales team to succeed, because that's how we all succeed. So going in and really working with the sales team, and sometimes what you get, because salespeople are under a tremendous amount of pressure, right? They have to hit quotas. They're trying to hit their numbers. They have demanding customers that are coming at them. So their request may not come to you as gracefully as you'd like, but taking a deep breath and saying, this isn't about me. This is about what's best for the company. Let's talk and see if we can't come up with a solution that works for the customer and works for us. And so I think, instilling that mindset, I think really pays dividends, and leads to better financial solutions for the company.
Yeah, I like that. I like both of those. So taking that deep breath, just pausing for a second so you can gather your faculties and really listen to what the person is looking for. I think that's great. And then just being proactive enough, even if you're not sales, like everybody should if you have a large everybody should just go around and make sure that they know someone from at least one other department. Our company's small, so we should know everybody because we're together and we're small enough where every week we can all get together for breakfast. Not all company, we're 350 people, we can't do that. And so just getting out and getting in front of people, I think, is such practical advice. I want to thank both of y'all so much for being here today and joining us and sharing all of y'all's thoughts. It wasn't Narnia, it's Narnia Light, which I like. The Pursuit of Narnia.
The Pursuit of Narnia.
We're the Pursuit of
Still
Narnia and Pursuit of Happiness. Yeah. So thank y'all so much for being here today. And to our audience who's listening to us each week, we thank y'all so much for tuning in. Please share this with people that you think would be impactful in their life and their career. And we will see you next time.
If you're looking for the next step in your career or the missing piece for your team, Unity Search has you covered. Whether it's finance and accounting, tax services, information technology, or human resources, Unity Search is here for you with experienced and dedicated hiring professionals. Reach out today and take the next step. Unity Search, placing you first.